Yesterday, stranded Nigerian students of Semy State University in northeast Ukraine must have heaved a sigh of relief following the announcement by Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister, Geoffrey Onyeama, that their evacuation to Central Europe will commence today. Onyeama said this via Twitter after extracting a promise from his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, that the Ukrainian government will establish a humanitarian corridor and authorize the evacuation of Nigerian students from Sumy. Sumy is the capital of Sumy Oblast in Ukraine and lies about 48 kilometers from the border with Russia. It was one of the first cities to be attacked by Russian forces after President Vladimir Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. Now joining us from Bucharest to discuss the preparedness of her mission to receive more Nigerians entering Romania from Ukraine is Safiya Ahmad Nuhu, Nigeria's ambassador to Romania, with concurrent accreditation to Bulgaria and Slovenia. Good morning, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ambassador Nuhu. It's good to have you again on the program. But very quickly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyeama, has said that we've been able to secure the agreement of the Ukrainian authorities to provide a safe corridor, a humanitarian corridor, for Nigerians who are now to be evacuated from Sumy. But Sumy is right at the center of the war zone. Do we have the concurrent agreement of the Russians to ensure that there will be safe passage? Because this is also a concern for the Indians. If we have the Ukrainians saying, oh, you can go now, but how do we ensure that there will be safety, considering the fact that they will be transported by buses and there are ground Russian forces there, and there's a lot of bombing from the air?
Okay, so thank you for having me once again on your show. So it was, it's such a great relief to be able to have that assurance that the students and the people actually that are stranded at Sumy will have the safe corridor, the humanitarian corridor. And so from the side of the missions, we have been told to all be prepared. What is on ground regarding the safe movement of the students? There's a lot that will depend on what is on ground, the situation that is on ground at the time that they're moving the people that have to be evacuated. Essentially, there are some options available. One of the easiest option is for them to go through the Russian border, which is the closest to Sumy. So, however, if the condition on ground at the time of the evacuation will prove to be more favorable or safe through the other borders, then it means they will be heading towards either Poland or Romania. So both Poland and Romania have been given instructions to fully be prepared to receive the evacuees when they arrive.
Right. I don't mean to sound gloomy about this, but what assurances do we actually have? Because you must be aware that a safe corridor was actually announced in a suburb of Kyiv previously, and as civilians were scampering to safety, they were attacked and killed even as they fled. And now the news has broken this morning that from 7 o'clock GMT, after a conversation with French Emmanuel Macron and President Vladimir Putin, a safe corridor has been announced in that same Kyiv, Mariupol, and of course Sumy. But are we 100% sure that Russians will in fact hold fire so that our Nigerian students can get through safely?
So there's never 100% assurance in any conflict situation. The major thing is to weigh the options and the possibilities of a safe evacuation. So one of the things that has held the government from taking any form of action is to verify and ascertain that the conditions are more favorable towards a safe transit than where it will put the students at risk. So most of the people at Sumy have been taking refuge and shelter in bunkers, and that is somewhat a safe space, although of course the tension and the fear of danger will never abate until they reach another safe border. So 100% assurance can never be certified in a situation like this.
What are the guarantees owing to the fact that there was a ceasefire just over the weekend that was violated by what the Ukrainians claim as Russia? The first shooting after the ceasefire. I mean, what are the guarantees? That just happened just over the weekend.
So basically the guarantees come from the Ukrainian side. And the guarantees is that the Ukrainian government will facilitate for the safe corridors and will provide intel and information for the evacuation process. And if at any point there is an indication of danger, so to say, then that will be communicated so that the safety of the evacuees will be assured.
Well, one of the concerns expressed about the evacuation situation in Ukraine is this discrimination against Africans and persons of color. Do you have any information as to what the Nigerian missions around that area have been able to do to also talk to the Ukrainians? Those who have the opportunity to escape through the border or get to the border are allowed to do so? Or we're just relying on our own devices on the basis of this agreement with the Ukrainians?
So really the missions have been working around the clock, dialoguing with all the parties and with the governments, that is in Ukraine, and then our host governments here in Romania and basically Poland and Hungary as well. Regarding ensuring or rather lowering any risk of discrimination. And I think the videos that have been circulated have raised the issue of discrimination. It has also caused a lot of solidarity towards Africans and people of color. And that has triggered a response that is more favorable. In terms of Romania, I know that that is not something that we've never gotten any feedback on discrimination. The reception of the refugees has been very favorable. In fact, there are amendments to laws and policies that will ensure not only the interest of the refugees fleeing Ukraine during the evacuation, but also taking into cognizance their future and the future of their education, taking into account the fact that most of them are actually students.
Right. You've also received some august visitors in the persons of Nigerian lawmakers who flew to Romania ostensibly to supervise the evacuation of Nigerians, which I would have thought would ordinarily be within your remit. What is your assessment of that supervisory role that they've come to play? Have they made any practical difference? Have they been helpful at all?
I think it has been impactful in the sense that it came at a time when the evacuees needed that motivation. It was also an opportunity for interchange and interaction, discussion and interaction directly between the lawmakers and the students. They have made some commitments, and in particular, I was quite happy with some of the commitments that were made in terms of seeing to it that avenues are explored to make sure that their future and the fears that they have are being addressed. So principally what we have all been dealing with from all the three major missions affected, I mean, there are other missions that are likewise affected by this refugee crisis. But one of the major things is the fear of the students for the fact that having spent so many years in school, they may stand to lose out on that. So that has created a kind of an issue of not all of them wanting to go back home because they feel it will be a better thing to explore opportunities of continuing education in the region. However, we got the commitment of the members, the honorable members, that they will see to it that the education aspect is integrated into the overall humanitarian response.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to go back to Sumy. What are we dealing with in Sumy? How many people, do we have a list of people that are leaving? I've been seeing a lot of lists being bandied around. Some people say 350, some people say 400, some people say even more than that. What's the exact number? Secondly, is there going to be protection, probably by the Ukrainian police and coverage and some level of covering as they go? And do they have money for transport? And I talk about protection because we saw what happened over the weekend. The Sky News journalist was shot by some Russian snipers, despite the fact that they were journalists and they were carrying press tags. So do we have all of that in check?
So when it comes to Sumy and Russia, I would say to you again that the best person to provide statistics and information would be the Embassy of Nigeria in Ukraine. And the ambassador has been very active in trying to coordinate. In fact, he brokered he facilitated the safe corridor, the humanitarian corridor that's that's the humanitarian corridor that will allow for the people in Sumy to be evacuated. So in that regards, I would say that it would really be better provided that information by the Embassy of Nigeria in Ukraine.
Well, Ambassador, the last time you were on this program, I asked you about, whether you are facing some challenges in terms of resources. But, okay, maybe resources may not be a problem, but what kind of challenges are you facing? Do you have enough staff on the ground? Do you have enough access to the relevant sections in that part of the world for you to be able to deliver effectively? Because we recall that during the initial evacuation, there were some hiccups, and but if you could take us through what challenges you are facing, particularly with regard to those students who are saying they are not going anywhere and that they will stay behind until the war subsides.
So amazingly, we have gotten a lot of support, and in terms of financial and human resources. In fact, we have had our missions reinforced with staff that will help at the border points, because part of the initial challenges that we faced was that the crisis was foisted upon us without the knowledge that it was really going to happen at that time. So for us at the embassy, we have had to post almost all of the staff to the 4 border points to be able to receive people. So when they were there, the people that were being put in buses to come over to us needed also people to receive them. So that was a challenge. But that is no longer an issue as we have had support in that regards.
I mean, with regards to the students in Sumy that we all saw recently over the weekend and their sort of impassioned pleas, it makes you wonder exactly how many other people are stuck. And also makes you wonder, how long is this window that they have to get to you in Romania, for example? For how long would the federal government be ferrying Nigerian students is really what I'm asking. When would that window close? Do you have a message for the Nigerian students and other Nigerians living in Ukraine that you need to get out by such and such date, because that's when we have funding to take care of you, and that window will close? Are you contemplating anything like that?
So I would say that, again, priority remains what would work best for their safety. And the pleas and the reality is that in general terms, you can never have specific figures. You can only have projections. So the projections that you work with are the projections that are circulated on the social media that there's about this number of people. And then also, there's also the ones that we have communicated to the embassies. The embassies have been receiving direct emails. And the good thing about Sumy is that they've been also coordinating themselves. They know themselves and they have a student leader that's been coordinating. But insofar as they do not reach us and we get proper documentation, we really cannot get specific figures.
Okay. Ambassador, quickly confirm for us the number of people evacuated out of Ukraine, the specific number, please.
Out of Ukraine?
I mean, out of, out of Romania now, the people that have been airlifted.
Okay, so I would say that the people that have reached us in Bucharest alone are over 1,000. Over 1,000 have reached us, and when we were planning for the evacuation, we had a 560 jumbo jet arrive here, and 412 students were, voluntarily got on the flight. So the remaining have opted to stay and hang around to see what favorable environment they might find here in Romania. So for us, that's a kind of a danger because it can negatively affect the evacuation process, and then it can create complications as well when the students are on their own. You know, we have, that's like a projection of between 600 to 800 that are on their own, and that can be a problem, really.
Okay, so 600 to 800 stayed back, over 412 were evacuated.
Could actually be more.
Okay.
Could actually be more.
Thank you.
Because there are those that could not reach us in Bucharest, and those that could have found their ways from the borders.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador.
Okay, Ambassador Nuhu, thank you very much for joining us. We'll take a short break now, but before we do so, since you are in that zone, in that region of the world, what's your reading of the situation? I was listening to an Indian general on Republic TV, and he was saying that, look, he doesn't think that this war will go on for a very long time, but that the major challenge that the world faces is the immorality of the Western forces and NATO in particular. But you're on the ground. What's your reading of the situation? Do you think that this will go on for a much longer time, or there could be a real ceasefire at some point?
So we're always hoping for a ceasefire, and I see that as a possibility. But you can never predict what can happen in a war situation. Whereas I think it's always a 50-50. It can happen or it may not happen. Just like I said earlier, the way the war began is something that's kind of a surprise, because everyone was hoping there will be some form of a negotiation that will preempt the war in the first instance. So when something is asked regarding what can happen, it's not very easy for one to be able to predict. But I can again say that the effects of the war are already so much that it will take at least, let's say, a year to be able to address the damage that it has done. Damage to infrastructure, damage to family systems, damage to futures of students, damage within a lot of different other, Ukraine was somewhat a thriving economy. It was doing well. So it will take some time to really repair the damage that's been done. Families have been torn apart, boys have to stay back to fight. So those are things that will really have long-term consequences, not only on Ukraine, but also on the country interests in Europe and the wider world in general.
So the conversation still comes back, Ambassador, about when Ghana was making a decision and when America said the people should leave, why didn't we pass that level of intelligence out?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that question.
So when Ghana was saying people should leave and when America precisely was saying their people should leave, that why didn't, you know, the ambassadors around those countries pass on those kind of, that kind of intelligence?
So, you know, there's a lot in intelligence sharing. Sometimes some of the information that can be passed is an information that can predict something that could happen. You know, it depends on how you're going to weigh that information. So it could have happened, or it may not have happened. Even though there was that intelligence at the time it was given, and I had been following the developments between Russia and Ukraine quite closely because of our proximity, I myself was quite optimistic that the war was not going to happen, at least not at the time that it started.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Nuhu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.